Hi everyone, my name's Raglan Krishnaswamy. I'm the Health Promotion Officer, Sexual Health Promotion Officer at Aqua. Today I have Stuart Torrance, a Men's Health Project Officer at the Australian Men's Shed Association. Um, Before I start today, I'd just like to make a acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people of the Noongar Nation, the traditional owners of the land, Whadjuk Noongar Boodja, on which we work. I acknowledge the elders, past, present, and emerging, and continuing cultural, spiritual, and religious practices of the Noongar people. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands you are joining from today and other Aboriginal nations represented here today. In the spirit of reconciliation, I acknowledge our non-Aboriginal colleagues who walk beside us. Thanks, Stuart. If you wanted to take it away.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Raglan, and thank you very much for the warm invitation to come along and share about the Australian Men's Shed Association and the work that we do in over 1,300 sheds across Australia. But Raglan, I'd just like to acknowledge your acknowledgement and thank the Aboriginal community for reminding me as a white fella to pay my respects to my elders, both past and present, because both communities have come together over the years to fight the wars, floods, fires, droughts that have made Australia what it is today. And I really appreciate the place, the wonderful place that I live and enjoy because of their endeavours in the past. So I'd like to just thank the elders for reminding me to pay my respects to my elders. And I hope that I one day will be an inspiration to my children and other children, and they too will pay their respects to my generation for the work that we've done. So just going into the presentation, I suppose I better explain a little bit about myself. I'm Stuart Torrance. I'm the Men's Health Project Officer for the Australian Men's Shed Association. Now, you might think that might mean that I've got some medical expertise. Absolutely none. In saying that, what I bring is my experience, my life experience, my experience with Dementia Australia, my experience with my family illnesses and ailments over the years. And I'm probably more an example of what not to do than what to do. So in doing that, I run the Spanner in the Works program, which goes out to over 1,300 sheds, and in fact, to over 2,500 sheds across the world, because this phenomena of the Australian Men's Shed Association, whilst it started here in Australia, has spread throughout all the world with numerous sheds in numerous countries all over the place. And it's a pleasure to be a part of the grassroots. In fact, this year we are celebrating 30 years of sheds, from the first shed that was started in a little township of Galwa in South Australia. And by the way, it was started by a nurse, not a male nurse, a female nurse, that was noticing that the men that were bringing their wives to her health groups were sitting out in the cars reading their newspaper and weren't really engaging with one another, weren't coming together, weren't talking a heck of a lot. They were just sitting there in their cars while their wives did their thing. And she went out and she knocked on the window and she said, you guys can come in. And they went, no, we'll be right. We'll sit here in the paper, we'll read the paper. And they did. They just sat and sat. And she wondered, how on earth can I engage these men? Because I'm sure they need as much of this health information I'm sharing with their partners as their partners do. So she went out and she said, look, guys, I've got a shed that I need cleaning out. Will you help me? And sure enough, the guy said, absolutely, we'll help. And they cleared out the shed. Then she said, I'd like to build a bench, a workbench, and put some tools on the wall. My father used to have a shadow board. So can you put some tools on the wall? And that, yep, absolutely. And then once they had completed putting the shed together, she said, guys, I'd like you to, make some things for my organization, and they did. And the first shed was born. So I've been around sheds for over 16 years. In one way or shape or the other, I've either been directly working with sheds or working with Alzheimer's Australia, New South Wales for 9 of those years, engaging men in the early stages of dementia and linking them with the local men's shed. But the beauty of men's sheds, whoops, my apologies, is that it's for every bloke. Every bloke that, identifies, I suppose, as a bloke can come into the shed, and they come in for multiple of reasons. Now, I usually show this slide and I say, which one of these guys has dementia? You wouldn't actually know, because most of the guys in the early stages of dementia are just like you and me. But why do blokes come to the shed? I think you'll see in there they come for the friendship, they come for the tools, the community, the activities, a reason to get out of bed in the morning. The one thing that they don't come to the shed for is health. Now, why are we supported by the Department of Health in regards to setting up men's sheds? You see, sheds work very well in the health realm simply because it's health by stealth. We get them in to socialize and befriend one another. Camaraderie's big on the agenda in men's sheds. The tools are another big draw card. They come in and they've got all the toys that they can ever think of. Every shed's different, by the way. We've got sheds that have music groups. We have sheds that are artistic. We have woodworking sheds and metalworking sheds. They're the I suppose the core projects that are happening in most sheds. But we also have sheds that have small engines, full-on car restorations. And there's even a shed in Sydney that restores old ferries, and they've got some big industrial machinery. Now, my apologies. What is, I suppose, quintessential about sheds is that it is for every man. We have lawyers and doctors. We have builders and street sweepers. We have every kind of trade and non-trade, white collar, blue collar, come into a shed, and they're all welcomed. In fact, John Paul Young, of 70s rock star fame, has supported sheds for quite some time, and he came and has put together a jingle for us. Short, fat, tall, skinny, hairy, bald. It's welcome one and all to the men's shed. It's a great jingle, and we've been enjoying that jingle playing in the background. But what are sheds for? What is it all about? It's non-clinical. The space is inclusive. It's familiar. It's also informal. They get to share their skills. They get camaraderie, and they feel safe to say what they want to say in the space. I suppose in relation to sort of trying to find a common area between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal, it's that men's business, business between men that is, I suppose, very sacred and very personal. You don't want children and ladies coming into an area where blokes are swearing. We call that ducks on the pond. And as soon as ducks are on the pond, the swearing stops. The pictures that are in the lockers get tucked away, and the respect comes out. But blokes need that space. Blokes need that space to be able to say what they think and what they feel, to be free to, I suppose, drop a swear word every now and again if it comes out. No one seems to be offended, but they're very respectful of their counterparts. And we get a lot of support from the females within our communities. Quite often they will bake a cake, they'll send along biscuits, but they'll also step up to be the shed secretary. Some sheds actually do have female membership, and other sheds have female days and men's shed days. The shed is the men's space, and in that regard, they are able to make decisions as to who comes in, who shares, what the rules are. Every shed is autonomous. The Australian Men's Shed Association doesn't tell sheds what to do. We help them do what they want to do. In fact, there's an Aboriginal shed out in the Northern Territory that has a real hankering for music. So their shed is not about woodwork or metalwork. They have a band. They've built a wonderful building where they can go and they can jam and have music sessions. They go outside later on in the evening and put on a performance for their community and entertain their young people. It's all about connection, camaraderie, and community. That's what men's sheds are all about. It's about men's business. And over those years, over those 16 years that I've been involved in sheds, they've supported me, even as a worker. And it's important that we don't miss the actual health message that we slip in. And we do that through the Spanner in the Works program. It's empowering men to live healthier lives. How and why? We introduce little things. We've got a movie coming, a video series coming up on healthy exercise to prevent falls and balance issues. That'll be sent out as a warm-up video for the sheds to do before they actually get on the tools. We aim to reduce the rate of Australian men dying from preventable causes. We hope to address suicide reduction and reduce suicide in older males throughout Australia. But sheds are not just for old men, they're also for the younger guys, and that connection to maybe young guys that don't have a male figure within their family. They can come alongside some of the elders within their community, and they get to learn the respects. They get to learn the trades. They get to gather information and resources for their own lives. Sheds have been extremely important for these men, and time again, men will come up to me as I visit a shed, and they tell me, if it wasn't for the shed, I'd probably be dead. And you know, that is a huge statement in regards to the effect the sheds have on the males in our community. Because let's face it, once we've retired, once we have lost our jobs, what else is there to do but go to the pub or the club, where, as you know, we would get into trouble, and we often do. In that regard, here is a safe space. And I'm not saying that sheds don't drink. We have sheds that actually have brew rooms, and they make beers and they make wines. They keep bees. They have forges. They do every kind of activity that you could imagine. Sheds are a place to gather, a place to share, a place to come over and show each other how to grow food, eat food, how to store things, how to restore things. And yep, they're breeding like rabbits. I started as the Hunter Valley Cluster Coordinator in Australia 16 years ago, and it was a 2-year contract. 16 years on, I'm still around. There was something like 600 sheds in Australia when I joined 16 years ago. We now have over 1,300 sheds across Australia and over 2,500 sheds across the world. How fantastic is that? This is a safe space for men to go. If you wanted a shed in your community, if you think a shed would be of value to the men in your community, then the Australian Men's Shed Association is totally free to join. You can sign up at our website and get all the information that you need. We have well over 1,000 resources everything from administration right through to work health and safety statements, how to work with outside organisations, how to address issues and disputes within the shed. All these resources are freely available. The other thing is we have state associations, and Western Australia have MenShed WA as a group that is exceptionally proactive in assisting sheds set up, assisting sheds connect to their local health organisations and other resources within their community. So they're another good place to start in regards to maybe thinking about starting a shed. The two difficulties in starting a shed that I have come across over the years is gathering enough men together where there are men that put up their hand and say, I want to lead this project. I want to make this thing happen for my community. I'm happy to be president, secretary, treasurer, and all the important roles that bring the shed together. That committee is quite difficult to put together because somebody must have the vision. Then the other problem is a space to work from. We have sheds that are auspiced by health organisations, community organisations, community centres, councils have auspiced sheds, churches have auspiced sheds. I'm going to have to be careful with that word. The auspicing arrangements need to be surrounded by a memorandum of understanding so everybody knows exactly where they start. All those materials, all those suggestions can be found on our website. My apologies. My apologies. Okay, so I've got a poem that was written for the Australian MenShed Association back when I was working with Alzheimer's. I'm just going to let that play in the background for 2 minutes, but you can actually pick up the poem from our website.
He felt inside he was still able to control his life, though he had little difficulty since he lost his wife, and his daughter lived in Queensland, and his son away at sea. Well, he thought, I always was my own best company. Besides, there's one advantage that being single brings. There's nobody to fuss me when I can't remember things. I've got my books and telly, I'll get along okay. So he didn't feel dementia creeping on him day by day. But his doctor saw it when the old man called in with the flu. I think I'll get the district nurse to keep an eye on you. Of course the old man grumbled that he'd be quite okay, but still the district nurse called in to see him the next day. She was young and bright and pretty, and she even made him smile, and he found that he could put away his troubles for a while. So weeks went by, till one day, when she came to visit, she said, "Get your coat and come with me. There's something you should see. I have to pick up Mr. Hughes, he's 3 doors down from you, to take him to his men's shed, and I'd like you to come too." He started to protest this, but she gently took his arm and smiled and said, "Oh, please come. It won't do you any harm." What could he say but all right as he turned and locked his door, not knowing that this day would change his life forevermore? For though some pessimistic thoughts were running through his head, they soon gave way to wonder as he walked into the shed. 'Course the men inside were just like him. He wasn't out of place. To any keen observer, he was just another face. The district nurse said, "Look around, and I'll be back at 10. That gives you time enough to get to know the other men." Then Mr. Hughes said, "Call me Frank. Let's get a cup of tea. Then we can look around a bit. There's quite a lot to see." And as they sat and chatted while their cup of tea they drank, he found he had a lot of things in common now with Frank. That as they wandered through the shed and some men stopped to chat, he took an interest in their work and thought, I could do that. And no one seemed to hurry. They all worked at their own pace, yet the air of quiet endeavour brought a faint smile to his face. The district nurse returned at 10 to take him home again, and though he left, his heart told him he'd much rather remain. So when she dropped him at his gate, he told her with a smile, "Next time you take me to the shed, I'd like to stay a while."
Okay, so here we have two To many, the shed might be just a shed, but to me, it's a sanctuary. That is exactly what a shed is to a lot of blokes. Sheds are usually open from the early morning, from 8 till 9 a.m., usually through until 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that ensures these guys can get home to receive grandkids, to pick up kids from school and the like. But a great time is had between the hours of 8 to 12, 1 o'clock in the day, where they pick on one another. If you're not being picked on, you're probably not liked within the shed. They roast each other. They tell jokes. They tell bad jokes, and they tell absolute funny stories that go on and on. One of the fondest memories I have is a lot of things get donated to sheds from the community. And I remember opening a tin of something that had been donated, and there was all these tiny little clear pellets in the bottom of the tin, and I sniffed it, and it was like, what on earth is this? And I turned round, and the guy next door to me must have been in his late 80s, and he looked in the tin and he says, "Oh mate, that's horse glue." I said, "What?" He says they would boil down horses' hoofs from the abattoirs, and they would make glue out of it. Now, my job as a teenager, as an apprentice, was to go in, light the fire and put the glue on and put more pellets in the pot. And I got an hour and a half's worth of this guy's life story about how, as an apprentice, he used to heat up horse glue. Now, that might just be a story about horse glue. But to that man, it was a very important part of his life. And I don't know whether you can see the sign behind me, but guess what? Sheds are about solving the world's problems, 2 cups at a time, over a conversation. We have a saying, we tend to work shoulder to shoulder. We share shoulder to shoulder rather than face to face. Don't get me wrong. There are coffee groups for men. There are meal groups for men. And they work really well. But the one thing that we have found that works superbly is the shed, where it replicates their own garden shed, their own workshop. It replicates their work environment as they grew up, the apprenticeship that they did, the office that they used to sit in with all the other stuffed shirts. You know, quite often we'll get a banker come into a shed, and the boys will rub their hands together and they'll say, "Terrific, someone to be treasurer." And invariably the comment will come back, "Get stuffed. I've been pushing a pen all my life. I want to get dirty." So they put him on the tools. And then you'll get a brickies labourer come into the shed, and he goes, "What can I do? Oh, I don't want to do any more hard work in the garden." "You want a treasurer?" "Oh, I'll give it a go. Is there anyone that can help me?" And usually the banker comes alongside and he says, "I'll show you what to do. You show me how to operate this machine." And together, they come together and support one another. And halfway through the conversation, there'll be a comment about heart troubles. There'll be a comment about poor eyesight, loss of hearing, troubles at home. And a trouble shared is a trouble halved, as we all well know. Men sheds are a wonderful way of reaching men and doing wonderful things in our communities. I hope that you can all join the local men shed. Thank you very much for listening and sharing about the shed world. Please feel free to get in touch. I'm Stuart Torrance from the Australian Men Shed Association. My email is stuart@menshed.net. That's MENSSHED. Yes, 2 S's in the middle, no hyphen, no spaces. So stuart@menshed.net. And I'd be happy to reply to any of your emails with any questions that you might have. Thank you very much for joining me today. And thank you very much, Raglan, for the opportunity. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Stuart. That was an amazing presentation.
Sorry for the faux pas, mate.
No, it was amazing. Like just the amount of community engagement, the growth of the organization, and just the stories, that's truly inspirational. It's great to hear like there's a space like that in men's health, especially with the issues that we face today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
like reaching men, the amount of researchers that get in touch with us and say, we've got a research project coming on. We have 75 women have signed up. We've got 2 men. Can you put the word out there and get some men to actually participate in our research? Because men really aren't interested.
yeah, it's really hard to get a community together of men in general, and speaking about their mental health too. What an amazing space.
So
and
allowing them to focus on something totally and this is what I thought our conversation would be, a conversation between you and me. So Raglan, what I would suggest you do is get yourself down to your local men's shed, go and say good day to the guys. Absolutely, you would enjoy it. Go and see 4 or 5 sheds. 4 or 5 sheds will give you an idea of the diversity that is within sheds. It'll blow your mind, mate. It really will.
I'm definitely going to do that. It's totally inspired me to get joint up in my community and stuff like that. Thank you again, Stuart.